Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Vice Chair Blas.
Here.
State Attorney Alexia Cox. Here. Commissioner Cruz.
Here.
Public Defender Daniel Eisinger. Here. Commissioner Kugler.
Here.
Chair Romano.
Here.
Commissioner Vera Garcia. Present. Thank you.
Thank you. And while it is not on the agenda, could we please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Any introductory comments from the members of the commission? All right. Is there a motion to approve the Inspector General meeting minutes from February 5th, 2026? That was our special meeting.
Motion to approve.
By Commissioner
Second.
Vera Garcia, second by Commissioner Kugler. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Okay, thank you very much. New business, we are on to the real business of this meeting, which is to pick new Inspector General as John is retiring. At this time, I'm going to ask Paul to come on up and help a brother out.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. It's wonderful working with you again on this particular process. I'd like to share, and again, I'm sorry, I'm Paul Mattiotto with Human Resources. I'm the Recruitment Selection Manager for the county. I'd like to provide a brief recap of the process. So the last IG meeting in February, the committee narrowed the pool of candidates for the Inspector General position to four finalists. In the interim, we had one of those four finalists remove himself from consideration, so that left three. Another finalist indicated he was navigating a medical issue and would not be available until April to interview. I'll address that in a moment. That did leave two finalists, and I'm confirming their attendance here today, and that's Ms. Calinthia Dillard and Mr. Jim Kurdar. Those finalists have passed their background check, which was conducted by Human Resources and included a criminal background investigation, as well as verification of their certifications and degree qualifications. I'd like to turn back to the finalist who indicated that he would not be available until April. I would just seek direction from the committee on whether they wish to reschedule them. We reviewed this information with the county attorney's office regarding his request, and I want to inform the committee that there is no obligation for the committee to reschedule that finalist.
Does anybody wish to weigh in?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we complete the interview process today with the candidates present.
I don't think we need a motion. We can reach consensus, or do we need a motion? I'm going to take a motion. Fine, I'll take a motion. Who wants to second it?
Second.
Like Alicia? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Thank you. So we will proceed today.
Okay.
The candidates we have.
That's a recap I have for the committee. We have the two candidates available, and we can have them come down to the table here.
Come on down. It's your turn.
So committee, this is Ms. Calinthia Dillard and Mr. Jim Kurdar, your finalists for the interviews.
You pronounce it Kurdar? Yes. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Ms. Dillard. Good afternoon, Mr. Kurdar. You will be asked a series of questions by the committee members, and you'll have 3 minutes to respond to each question. The committee member asking the question will have the opportunity to ask you a follow-up. You will have 1 minute to respond to the follow-up. Am I going too fast, or you follow? Okay. There is a timer that you can view. Where is that timer? There is the timer. It says here that I'm supposed to gesture, so I'm gesturing. All right. These interviews are being conducted using a round-robin approach. An example of how that works, a committee member will ask the first interview question. Ms. Dillard will respond to the question, then Mr. Kerdar will respond to the same question. We will then rotate the order of the questions, with Mr. Kerdar going first on the next question, and back and forth it will go. We'll continue alternating until everybody has had a chance to ask their questions. We'll proceed through the initial set of questions so that each committee member has an opportunity to ask a question. Then we will determine if the committee wishes to ask additional questions. At the end, we will fill out a secret ballot, which you will find on the left inside pocket of your notebook. And then once the results are tallied, I will call for a public motion and a second to confirm that vote. Everybody on board with that? Okay. So now we'll begin the interview process, and we'll start alphabetically with Ms. Dillard. You will answer the first question. Commissioner Eisinger, you're up.
All right. My first question is, please describe your experience as it relates to the Office of Inspector General, specifically this position. What about your experience do you believe helped you prepare to lead this office?
You need to turn your microphones on when you talk.
Did you hear me? Would you like me to, you want me to repeat that?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to interview for the position of Inspector General. My name is Olympia Dillard, and I am currently the General Counsel and Deputy Inspector General in the Office of Inspector General. I've been in this role I've been in the role of General Counsel since 2015 and 2017. The duties were expanded to include Deputy Inspector General. As General Counsel, I have the ability to offer legal advice and counsel to everyone on our staff. As Deputy Inspector General, however, I am deeply involved in the decision-making process as it relates to administrative and operational decisions. Since I've been there, I have been instrumental in changing some of the efficiencies within the office to include, when I first arrived, I noticed that we did not have the same level of exemptions in Florida statutes that people who are in law enforcement and judges enjoy. So I led the initiative, the statewide initiative, that resulted in a statutory amendment. In addition to that, I am currently the HR officer, the training officer, and the ethics officer for the office. If there is a complaint involving any of our staff, I am the one who would handle that investigation. With respect to ethics, if there are concerns, they would bring those questions to me. I instituted a training program throughout the office where we provide training opportunities on a monthly basis with limited exceptions. And the purpose of that is to save money on training. I've participated in bringing the staff that we have in the office. We have a very dedicated staff, and it's very important that we give them training opportunities and make sure they are equipped with all the tools that they need to be successful in their jobs. In addition to that, not only do I review our reports, but I'm intimately involved in the report writing process, coming up with the plan for the projects that we do. I help write the recommendations, the allegations, as well as our findings. So I'm part of the decision-making process, and in addition to that, I've had leadership opportunities within the community that I feel that have helped me in the office. I've chaired the Professional Ethics Committee for the Florida Bar. I've chaired grievance committees for the Florida Bar, and those involve ethics questions against attorneys. And I'm able to utilize those skills and knowledge that I gained from those outside experiences within the office as well. And lastly, I'll say I have worked very diligent throughout my professional career. I've been an attorney for 27 years to develop a reputation for ethics and integrity. And through that reputation, I feel like it has enhanced the work that I do in our office. People know what to expect when they come to us, and they're willing to file complaints because they...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kerdar. Is it on? It's not on. Try the one next to it.
Test.
Okay. Reset the clock, please. Can we reset the clock? Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and I want to first and foremost thank the Chair, Commissioner, and the rest of the commissioning team for providing this opportunity for me to interview for this very coveted and significant and important position. Good afternoon. My name is Jim Kurdar, and I've had over 26 years of experience working in not only the Inspector General community, but as well as the intelligence community. As a proud United States Air Force veteran and of Desert Storm, I began my oversight work early in the mid-1995 with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. That experience led me to conduct a lot of different types of investigations and oversight because fraud, waste, and abuse is not necessarily a matter that is federal and or state, but fraud, waste, and abuse is across the board an issue that needs oversight regardless of the position, whether it be federal, state, or local or county. And throughout my career, I have elevated in leadership roles. In 2004, I started working with the Department of Justice, Office of the Inspector General. And during my tenure with them, some would argue that's probably one of the most critical of the federal IGs, given our national security and law enforcement apparatuses that fall within the Department of Justice. There are very much a lot of opportunities for me to work in joint task forces, whether it be on the integrity committees, whether it be on the fraud, waste, and abuse committees. And in 2009, my position brought me to Washington, D.C., where I was tasked with monitoring the $5 billion of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act money that the Department of Justice was dispersing in grant funds. I was hand-selected for that position from the office that I was in Los Angeles, and I think that that also allowed me to have a lot of interface with different agencies, both on the federal, state levels. And I think my experience, although I have not been involved in the county level, I believe that I have that institutional independence that will make me an objective, should I be appointed to this position, and eliminate any perception of internal bias. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And the next question will go first to Mr. Kurdar. Alicia.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
In your opinion, what will be the top 2 or 3 challenges and opportunities of the Office of Inspector General in the next few years, and how would you address them?
So I think one of the challenges, or I would say several of the challenges, but the most important one that comes to mind is the manning. The opportunity to have, I believe, during the initial ordinance, there was FTEs for 40 personnel. I think that that is very important. But of course, manning is tethered to budget, and budget is tethered to risk. But given the 39 municipalities that we have here in this county, we need to have the necessary resources, and we necessarily need to have the manning to handle those. And so in order to get those subject matter experts, you need the funding, and that's where the challenge comes in. The other challenge, I believe, is to maintain and sustain public trust. We are stewards of the taxpayers of this county, and we have to never fray from that in the sense that the public always has to have that trust in us. And therefore, I believe that is a continuous improvement process where you have to have the outreach, you need to have the internal controls in place. But to get back to your question, I think that the manning, I think, is probably going to be the initial that comes to mind as far as trying to get those other positions. But again, it's product-driven, so it's a balance that you have to do there, so thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dillard?
Can you repeat the question again?
In your opinion, what will be the top 2 or 3 challenges and opportunities of the Office of Inspector General in the next few years, and how would you address them?
Okay. I would say the challenges stem from budget. Here in Florida, all governmental entities are being asked to take a look at their budgets, and some hard decisions are going to have to be made pretty soon, within the next few years. But I think it's important for us in the IG arena to recognize that we may have to do the same thing that we ask the people that we oversee to do, which means to be good steward of taxpayer dollars. So we will have to look at some operational efficiencies and perhaps make some changes. The goal, however, is to try to do that with avoid reduction in staffing. But we have to have some honest, true conversations. The second challenge, I think, deals with IT. Interwoven with the question about the budget challenges, we still have to make sure the people that we have on staff and who are there to do the work have the tools that they need. And one issue with IT is not only hardware and software, but AI. That's a conversation that many people are having. Some people fear it, but it's here to stay and it's not going anywhere. And I think one thing that we have to do in our office and have a serious conversation about is what are ways that we can implement AI in our processes, meaning that we can use it to be more efficient and effective. That could range from document review, that could range from summarizing investigation interviews, as well as preparing for those interviews ahead of time, and perhaps helping and assisting with drafting reports. At the same time that we're having that discussion, I think it's very important that our staff understands the limitations of AI, meaning we have to be mindful of the need for a governance structure. We have to be aware of potential biases. As auditors, you make decisions based on sample size, and if you input information using AI that is not appropriate for the finding that you're trying to, the information that you're trying to analyze, it could produce an improper output. So we have to be trained and knowledgeable on AI, have a governance structure, and we are in the business of collecting evidence. So our staff has to be mindful that some of the evidence that we collect could be manipulated. So we have to understand and appreciate the potential for the risk of AI, the fact that it could be used to provide evidence to us that is not reliable. So we have to be sufficiently trained to recognize that and to address our processes to deal with that. The opportunities include the fact that we already have a very knowledgeable staff who are subject matter experts in their area. So if you gave me the opportunity to serve in this role, I could start on day one working with the staff I hired or participate in the hiring of all of them. We have established trust between us. And the other opportunity is the fact that I'm here in this community. I've been a part of this community for 27 years. The people, thank you.
Mr. Kurdar?
Yes.
Go ahead. He went first. I'm sorry. Mr. Cruz.
I think it's for Ms. Dillard, right? First question?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Dillard, please detail your leadership philosophy and how you would apply this to ensure the continued success of our wonderful Office of Inspector General.
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned earlier, to me, leadership has multiple components. First is making sure that leaders understand their obligation to make sure that staff understands the expectations for them, but leaders also have to lead by example and make sure they model the behavior that they expect. That means sometimes, working long hours, working weekends, but also being a good listener. Our staff members, our team, they're the ones that are closest to our audits and investigations. So going to them, if I were to get the position, one of the first things I would ask would be, if you were me, what would you do differently? Tell me what tools you need and to make sure that I'm there to give them everything they need. Ultimately, our goal is, one, to protect taxpayer dollars, but also to be of value and of service to the community. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that we have the tools that we need to enforce our mission. And that's to enhance trust. Leaders, also have to be willing to do the work sometimes. I don't anticipate that if I were elevated that I would stop working closely with the part of the writing the reports, making sure, because the IG's name is the one that goes on those reports, so being intimately involved in that process. So as a leader, I think you have to be a model, you have to be willing to ask questions, you have to be willing to be an example, and you have to be willing to set expectations on both sides. I believe that, you know, everybody in the office has the ability to lead. I believe strongly in the 360 model. People can lead up horizontally and vertically, and that is based on trust amongst the team members. Believing that there is an open door policy, that if you have needs, concerns, you can go to the leader and identify potential problems and work together on solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Throughout my career, I've held numerous leadership positions, and I've always followed the three-prong rule for me: clarity, empowerment, and fostering integrity. To further define that, clarity, you want to be able to give your team the directives and the goals. They need to know what they are, what the mission is. In order to do that, you have to have clear lines of communication. And when I mean communication, it goes both ways. So it's not a directive, it's more of a collaborative. But as the leader, they are looking to you to know what exactly the goals are, what is the mission at hand, and that's where the clarity comes in. Empowerment, you have to empower your people. It gives them a sense of ownership when they know that they're part of the process. When there's success in the office, it is a joint effort. It's not a single endeavor. Yes, sure, the Inspector General themselves, and they're the ones that have to perhaps give testimony on a particular audit or an inspection or an investigation. However, it is a team concept, and I think when they have that sense of pride in what they're doing and ownership, it works out great. But furthermore, in empowerment, not only do you give them the opportunity to feel as though they own the product, but you want to also provide them the resources in order to get the product done. And as a leader, that is your number one priority. You want to first ensure that they have the necessary resources and the tools to conduct the business that we have at hand, which is oversight. As well as you want to be able to promote and elevate your people. That's very important because that creates this additional trust. And lastly, you want to be able to promote integrity and professionalism in every product that goes out the door, because we have a responsibility to the commissioners, we have a responsibility to the public, and so we have to instill that sense of integrity into those products. Now, in sum, I like to say I lead with integrity, I manage with accountability, and I foster professionalism and public service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Vera Garcia.
Thank you. Mr. Carey has worked exceptionally hard at forming and maintaining trust and relationships between the IG's office and those that fall under the jurisdiction of the IG's office, whether that's the municipalities or the people themselves. If you were selected for this position, how would you maintain those relationships while still making sure that your IG's office and you yourself maintain the level of professionalism and independence necessary to run the office?
Right. Thank you for that question. Transparency. Transparency in and of itself is what the OIGs have to be. And through your transparency and independence, you have to maintain that relationship with, as you mentioned, with the public, as well as the municipalities and the commissioners. If I was appointed to this position, within the first month, I would make it a point to have that face-to-face in-person meeting with every single one of the mayors and the municipalities that fall within the county. That's very important. It goes a long way. As far as having the interaction with the commissioners, you would have quarterly meetings, monthly meetings, but you would have sustain a relationship where you have continuous communication with them as well, because they need to know what's going on. And again, it falls to the transparency of what the OIG needs to do, and you have to be transparent to that. As far as furthermore, outreach is very important to me, and I've pride myself in that. Liaisoning is essential. We don't live on an island as the IGs. Sometimes, some people might say because we're in that independent role. Not necessarily. The commissioners are our stakeholders. the municipality, the mayors are our stakeholders. We have to collectively work together, and if there's an issue, that's how these things get resolved. And as far as the public, you have to make them accessible to you. And how do you do that? You do that through your hotline. You do that through community outreach, whether it be giving awareness briefings, whether it be social media platforms. But the public has to feel as though, yes, they're in good hands because there is sound and strong oversight. So that's the big thing. Oversight involves having the continuous liaison. You need to have that open communication with the leaders of the community and the county. And you have to make them accessible so they feel comfortable coming forward if there is an allegation they need to make, that they have the opportunity to do so with confidentiality if necessary. So, thank you.
There are actually two schools of thought in the IG community about the level of independence, whether you have to be more isolated or if you can be actively involved in the community. I fall into the second category. I think outreach is very important for multiple reasons. In order for the community to understand what we do, understand our jurisdiction, and to trust us, they have to know what we do, what our passions are, what our mission is. They have to feel that we are accessible, that they can come to us if they see something that falls within our jurisdiction, that we will take that allegation seriously, that we will look into it with not only independence, but in an unbiased manner, that we will be fact-driven, utilize the evidence, and not be biased to lean in one particular way. We have to be, apolitical. But fundamental to our credibility is that independence. So we have to be able to liaison with the community and maintain that level of independence. And the other important factor for our office, and the reason why that visibility, that outreach is important, is we don't have enforcement authority within our office. And we have to get out in the community to make sure that people respect what we do, that people know that, that we are using evidence-based decision-making, and people are more willing to come to us to accept our findings and recommendation if they know who we are, what we do, and that we're willing to listen to their concerns. And I think you only accomplish that by doing outreach, getting out in the community, and talking to the leaders in the community, but also the taxpayers and the stakeholders.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vice Chair?
Yeah, as a lifetime forensic accountant, I have to ask the question. Tell me about a case that you've worked on in your career with a forensic accountant that you don't think you could have accomplished without the expertise of the forensic accountant. And also, how is communications? How did the forensic accountant keep you apprised of the case? How did you discuss case decisions? And I've had the experience of working with inspector generals in the past, and I've seen people handle it in different ways. But I'm wondering what your experience is, and tell me about a case that worked out well.
Is that for me first?
You're up.
Okay. Under our IG ordinance, we have the ability to hire outside experts, but lucky for us, we actually have accountants in our office, and we work very closely with them. I am certified as an IG auditor, but I would never try to pretend like I am an auditor. We rely heavily on the auditors and the accountants within our office. And so all of the audits that we do, we rely on their expertise. We make sure that they have, again, the tools that they need, they have the training, they have the certifications that they need to perform the work for the taxpayers in this community. With respect to particular cases, we've done cases where we've had to look at insurance matters, where we've had to look at premium payments, where we've had to look at tax payments, and all of those things are done when you have the level of expertise that we have in the office that can look at the evidence, look at the information, and make findings based on their expertise, based on the documentation. And we're very fortunate to have people in our office who can handle those matters for us.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Cordar?
Excellent question. There have been investigations where a forensic accountant fits hand in glove with the investigator and the special agent or the case agent. Reason being for that is they have the specialized training that perhaps an investigator or a standard auditor does not. So a forensic auditor will recognize nuances, will recognize anomalies that perhaps would be not seen by the case investigator and go unnoticed. As far as investigations, there's several investigations that we've done in the Department of Justice and using the forensic accountant, whether it be for a review of the procurement card, the government travel card. These things have resulted in hundreds of thousands of dollars of misuse that otherwise we would not have seen without the utility of a forensic accountant. So I am absolutely in favor of that, and I like to just take that one step further because that sort of leads into the other one. There's always been this line of division, regardless of where you are, between investigators and auditors. However, I have personally seen the success of the collaboration between investigators and auditors. And in my current role as the Assistant IG of Investigations with the Capitol Police, we have that continuous relationship with the audit division as well. Because there are things in an audit that perhaps may require an investigation, and vice versa. If there's an investigation, there's things where the investigation will stop because there's an audit that needs to be looked at. And we've had examples of that. One of them was a situation where during an investigation of, without going into names, it was an FBI agent. During the course of the investigation, unrelated to the allegations at hand, there was a time and attendance issue. And a time and attendance we got a forensic auditor to look into the situation, and that led to the Department of Justice's audit division blossoming into a bigger audit where it made national news. The FBI had to return $4 million in overtime payments. This had to do with the deployments in Iraq. And it was an anomaly that had no relation to the investigation. However, I had the good sense to write that up, and a referral was made. And vice versa. There was an audit with ATF that was referred to us, and it resulted in an investigation unrelated to the audit. And how do you do this? Well, you have quarterly meetings, maybe bi-monthly meetings with the audit personnel as well. And I am a big, big, big advocate and supporter of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Before I call on you, Commissioner, Commissioner Cox, I owe you an apology. First of all, I mispronounced your first name. I know your name is Alexia, not Alicia. And second of all, I called you by your first name when I should have called you Commissioner Cox. I apologize. Commissioner Krugler.
Thank you. So my perception is both of you have very different connections to the community. Ms. Dillard, you've been in this community for a long period of time. Mr. Kurdar, you're newer to the community. How do you believe that your connection, Ms. Dillard, or Mr. Kurdar, your new energy to the community is an asset to being the Inspector General here for Palm Beach County?
Yeah. Thank you very much for that question, Commissioner. It goes back to what I mentioned earlier. I bring that institutional independence coming from a different perspective. However, the basis and the core of what we do is oversight and fraud, waste, and abuse, which could be applied on the federal, state, and local level. I believe that my experiences, as I mentioned, in the last 26 years, and the contacts I've made, I think is sort of an added benefit coming to the county. Sure, there's going to be nuances that are different from the federal level, but with that being said, it's no different. Community outreach is community outreach. Oversight is oversight. Investigations is the same as audits elsewhere. You're looking for the truth. We're fact finders. It's not a gotcha thing, right? It's what I mean by that is you could be just as successful exonerating an individual that has been accused of wrongdoing, and that, I guess, transcends all levels. So if you apply the same knowledge, skills, and abilities, you could do that at the county level, you could do it at the federal level. It's just you need to be a strong leader for this position. So thank you.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned earlier, I've been in this community for more than 27 years. Throughout that period of time, I've worked diligent, not only trying to prepare myself for leadership, but also building a reputation for ethics and integrity. I was here in this community when the circumstances arose that led to the need for an IG in the first place. We had a moniker, and one of our commissioners ended up on the front page of Time magazine because of ethical lapses. So I have had the opportunity through my work in the community and through my work in the office to contribute to us in Palm Beach County improving that reputation. Whereas at one point in time, we were known for having less than stellar ethics as a community, we now, I believe, have a culture of ethics. And that comes from the outreach of the office, that comes from working with our partners, that comes from the leadership team individually going out and making connections, that comes with us working hard with talking to the stakeholders, talking to our partners, talking to the leaders of the respective municipalities. We have a very broad jurisdiction, unlike a lot of statewide and federal IGs where they are embedded in one agency. We have jurisdiction over 41 different units. And so, that takes time and effort, but we have put the time and effort into establishing those relationships so that people know what to expect. They know that they have somewhere to go if they see a problem in their communities. They know the type of work that we do, that it can be trusted, that they can rely on us, that we will make the evidence-based decisions, that we will do so on an independent basis, and that we won't be biased. They know what to expect, and I've spent 10 and a half years, almost 11 years of my career working on building that reputation in the community within the office. So I feel that, I've been here for 27 years, spent 10 and a half years in the office, and a substantial amount of that time has been making connections and building that trust, because ultimately it's about trusting our office and the community having trust in government in general.
Okay, here's mine. After you become appointed Inspector General and you've settled in, and I come over to take a look at your weekly calendar, how will I find you spending your time?
Is that for me? Okay. If I had the honor and privilege of being sworn in as IG, I anticipate that my schedule will look a little different from the way that it does now, but one thing I would continue would be our weekly meetings. Our leadership team meets on a regular basis every week, because when I first started, we did have an issue with people working in silos. So in order to deal with that, we scheduled a meeting so that we could talk across divisions, to apprise each other of what we're working on, to share expertise across teams, so that audit knows what investigations is doing, so that our contra oversight division know what the other two divisions are doing. The auditors and investigators think very differently, so they're often able to contribute different things to their projects. So I would continue that collaboration. In addition to that, I would continue our monthly meetings with all of our staff, because it is important for everybody to feel buy-in, to understand what we're doing. As things come into the door, they're sent to different divisions, and we don't want a situation where, quite frankly, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. But a part of that time would also be directed towards outreach, getting out in the community, talking to agency heads. We used to meet regularly with division heads within the county. I would reinstitute that, going out to meetings of the different municipalities, getting to know people, letting them know what we do, letting them know that we're available to do audits, because sometimes people come to us. But more than that, letting people know that we are not there just to find problems, but to prevent them as well. So that means preventative outreach. Letting people know that we are not only available, but when we make recommendations, the intent is really to help improve processes. We're making recommendations to deal with problems that we found, but also to give people an idea about ways to ensure that those problems never arise again. One of the things I did when I came into the office was to make sure that all of our reports were searchable on our website. They're in PDF format that's locked. But if you don't know they're there, you don't know what to look for. So a big part of what I try to do is based on transparency, being accessible, adding value to the community. And so I would spend a lot of time on efforts to continue to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Kerdar?
Yes. If you were to come in my calendar and looked at it, let's say for the first month, and everything as I would intend to do is to go out and meet people, as far as the leadership and everything is equal, and I'm able to do that, my calendar would be full with appointments. And it would be my in-person meetings to get out there, initial outreach. So on the calendar, I would have, hopefully, the 39 municipalities, the county commissioners. I would like to meet them as well, obviously, and set up meetings accordingly on a routine basis. But also, our law enforcement partners being the U.S. Attorney's Office and the State Attorney's Office. Those are key to what we do, especially on the investigation side, to have that relationship. So I would like to establish that relationship early. I like to develop it, enhance it, and foster that. And if I have that professional relationship with them at a time where I don't need to have a case to be referred to, then that certainly has created a situation where I could just pick up the phone and call them when I need them, because it's not the first time they're hearing from me. So if you looked at my calendar, I would set up leadership meetings on a weekly basis within the OIG with the leadership for both audit and investigations and the general counsel's office. We would have weekly meetings. And then we would have all hands meetings with everybody else on the staff, perhaps maybe once or twice a month, because then it's inclusive and they feel as though there is a sense of ownership. And you have to do that. And that is very important, where you would highlight ongoing investigations, ongoing audits. Perhaps there'd be some training going on. But my calendar would have one day just for the leadership meetings, all hands meetings. And for that first couple of months, it would be my attempt to meet in the key senior leadership within the county. And then establish that relationship and have routine meetings with them there forward. So I would be very, very busy, which means I have to probably spend a lot more time in the office, which absolutely is the key here to get things done, because it's service before self. And that's been always my philosophy. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do any of the commissioners wish to ask follow-up questions?
I have one question. When I worked for an Inspector General's office in New York, one of our nightmares was, we had finite limited staff, so one of our nightmares was not investigating a matter that actually blew up, so we had to prioritize what cases we would work on. So I'm just curious, how would you prioritize, given your limited staff, what type of cases that you'd work on, or try to avoid having embarrassing situations of cases that you don't work on?
Right. Triage comes to mind. You have to triage the complaints that come in, and you have to balance that with the resources that are available and what is ongoing at the time. And of course, the severity of the allegation that is brought forward will help steer and determine whether an investigation would be open. And we're exclusively talking about investigations. That would be certainly the approach that we would take. Is what's the allegation? What's the dollar value, if there's a dollar value? What is the misconduct? How egregious is it? Is it felonious? And do we have the resources to conduct that investigation? And all that considered, obviously, if it's a administrative or policy violation of a senior member of the community, then of course that would take precedent, because obviously there's some perhaps high profile or political implications in that, so you want to be able to address that accordingly. So again, you triage it based on your resources and the severity of the allegation.
Thank you. Ms. Dillard?
Currently, our office gets probably about 1,000 calls per year. And obviously, we don't open 1,000 cases. Some of them are not within our jurisdiction. Some of them obviously are, but we do have to evaluate whether that's something that we want to open. And some of the factors that we take into account would be the size of the matter, how much money is involved. But we also have to look at not only the resources, but the timeliness of the case. For example, if something comes in and the retention schedule has already passed, and it's likely that the documents no longer exist, or the staff that would have all the answers to the questions no longer work with the entity. That's a factor. That may be something that, it would not be a good use of our time to spend a lot of time searching for answers that neither the documents nor the witnesses are available. We also look at value added. Is this something where the problem has already been resolved? There are things where people complain thank you.
Thank you. That was 3 minutes? That
was-
doesn't seem like 3 minutes to me.
That was
Go ahead,
one.
you may finish it.
So I would just say that we, also take into account if it's a situation where the circumstances have changed, and us releasing a report to tell an agency what they already know may not add value to them, and it may not be a good use of our resources. So that's the type of thing that we probably would not open.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the commission? Okay, thank you both very much. We'll excuse you now. It is a public meeting. You're welcome to stay. We're going to begin our discussions now. Commissioners? You want to stay or you want to go? You can, it's a public meeting, so you can stay. You stare us down if you want. All right, is there any discussion? Or you want to go right to the ballots?
I would make a motion to complete the ballots at this time.
Okay, second? Second by Commissioner Cruz. All in favor, aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Okay, you'll complete the ballots, hand them in to me. Just make sure it's clear. I'll tally the, thank you. Wow. This is like Doc Holliday dealing it. Oh, I'm sorry. Peter, Paul, do I announce? So I knew it was one of the apostles. Do I announce the ballot, or do I just call for a motion?
In the previous processes that we've engaged in this, the chair has announced a count as they
right.
as they receive them.
All right. Give me just 1 second. All right. The person that the commission has chosen to lead the Inspector General's office is Colinthia Dillard. Congratulations. And thank you, Mr. Kerdar, for an outstanding presentation. I thought they were both highly qualified, but.
And I'm sorry, Chair. Excuse me.
Sir.
We would want a motion on the
Yep.
record and a vote.
Okay. Thank you very much. He told me that ahead of time. I must be sundowning.
Mr. Chair,
May I have a motion to,
Mr. Chair, could I motion to approve Ms. Colinthia Dillard as our new Inspector General?
Second.
Commissioner Cruz, second by Commissioner Kugler. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. It's unanimous. Thank you very much, Colinthia. Best of luck to you. And best of luck to you too, Mr. Kerdar. Thank you.
And Chair, the ordinance also requires whoever's going to be delegated authority to negotiate the contract from the Commission on Ethics. So we would want to do a motion to pick the individual from the Commission on Ethics that's going to work with HR and the county attorney.
Could I ask a question? Does that include just 5 or 7? I wasn't
So
sure.
the Inspector General Committee votes on that, but the member has to be the individual from the Commission on Ethics.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to do it, so don't nominate me. Okay, Mr. Cruz,
Second.
do we, one person is all we need?
It's one person.
One person? Okay, very well. Second by, so Mr. Cruz nominates Mr. Cruz, Mr. Kugler seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Mr. Cruz, you will negotiate the contract, get us a good deal. And then the contract goes, and then whatever we agree to goes to the BCC for
So the reason you have a delegation is Mr. Cruz is going to represent your interests in the negotiations. So it's going to go from here, once the contracts are agreed to by terms by staff, then it gets presented to the Board of County Commissioners for approval, and it's not effective until that approval. But it will not be coming back to this body.
Who will present to the board, the staff or Mr. Cruz?
It'll be staff. Mr. Cruz's job is done once the agenda item is prepared.
I promise I'll do a good job.
I knew you'd do a great job either way. All right, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye. Okay, by Commissioner Cox, seconds Commissioner Kugler. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much. Great day.
Yeah.
Yep.